Waitress pays for old man's meal. Then sees his name on the news. An elderly man sits alone in a small diner, quietly eating a simple meal. A young waitress notices him, and on impulse, pays for his food. Later, when she glances at the news, she sees his name in a headline that shocks the entire town. What happens next is unbelievable. Lisa Benson wiped her hands on her frayed apron and adjusted her ponytail as the early morning sunlight slanted through the diner windows. The light revealed every crack in the linoleum floor and illuminated the faded menu above the counter. The smell of stale coffee and frying bacon clung to the air. Another day had begun, and it promised nothing new. She was a single mother, working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on and a warm meal on the table for her 7-year-old son, Ethan. Most days, exhaustion pressed down on her like a heavy weight, yet she never let it show. Customers didn't need to know the struggle behind her tired smile. She poured coffee into a chipped mug and watched the city start to stir. Businessmen rushed past the diner doors, heads down, phones in hand, oblivious to the lives around them. But Lisa had learned to notice small details: the trembling hands of an elderly man counting coins, the hesitant gaze of a child longing for a treat they couldn't afford. Her apartment was tiny, barely more than 2 rooms with peeling paint and a heater that groaned every winter. Bills were stacked on the counter, reminders of the things she couldn't pay. There were nights she skipped dinner, pretending to eat leftovers so Ethan wouldn't know her hunger. And yet, despite everything, she carried herself with quiet dignity, refusing to let her circumstances define her. The morning began with routine, greeting the few early patrons, cleaning tables, refilling coffee, and taking orders. Lisa's co-workers often overlooked the little ways she gave more than expected. She'd slip an extra pastry to a hungry neighbor's child, or a bowl of soup to someone who had nothing. Her acts of kindness were quiet, almost invisible, but they carried a weight far beyond the diner's fluorescent lights. That Thursday morning, everything shifted. The diner door creaked open, letting in a gust of autumn air. A man entered, older, distinguished, with silver hair neatly combed and a suit that had clearly cost more than Lisa's rent. He moved with quiet confidence and chose a corner booth, avoiding eye contact with anyone else. Lisa noticed him immediately. There was a subtle vulnerability behind his composed exterior, and she felt an instinctive pull in her chest. She approached carefully, her voice soft. "Good morning, sir. Can I get you anything?" "Just a coffee, black, please," he replied. His voice was calm, tinged with weariness, like someone who had seen much of life but remained poised. As she poured the coffee, Lisa noticed a slightly worn leather wallet on the table. She debated speaking up, but the man seemed aware of it. Something told her this encounter was not ordinary. The diner hummed with its usual rhythm, the hiss of coffee, the clatter of dishes, and the low murmur of conversation. Amid this ordinary backdrop, Lisa's heart raced. She hesitated briefly, then reached into the tip jar and added a few extra dollars to cover his breakfast. "On the house," she said, smiling, forcing it casual. The man's eyes widened just a fraction. He looked down at the table, a faint, surprised smile tugging at his lips. "Thank you," he murmured. It was quiet gratitude, full of dignity, not pity, that struck Lisa deeply. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story to bring you something truly meaningful. If stories like this touch your heart and you want to see more acts of kindness that restore faith in humanity, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Now, let's see what happens next. The next morning, Lisa arrived at the diner a little earlier than usual, still carrying the weight of yesterday's quiet moment. She couldn't shake the memory of the man's calm, grateful eyes. Something about him lingered, like a gentle echo she couldn't ignore. The diner smelled of fresh coffee and frying eggs, but today it felt different, charged with a subtle tension she couldn't name. He arrived again, nearly at the same time, slipping into the corner booth with his hands folded neatly on the table. Lisa felt a small, involuntary flutter of curiosity. Why did someone who looked so poised and refined eat alone in a modest diner tucked away from the city's bustling streets? There was a story there, she was certain of it. As she brought his coffee and a simple toast, she tried to hide her nervousness behind a professional smile. "Good morning." "The usual?" she asked, though she knew it wasn't. "Yes, thank you," he said softly, and for a brief second, the air between them seemed to hold a quiet understanding. He was polite but reserved, as if protecting a private world no one had been invited into. Lisa couldn't resist. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but do you come here often? You don't seem like the usual diner crowd." The man glanced up, his eyes scanning hers for a moment before settling. "I'm just passing through," he said, carefully measured. Sometimes a quiet corner and a simple breakfast are all a person needs to gather their thoughts. Lisa nodded, feeling a strange kinship. She knew the kind of life that demanded resilience, the kind that made even ordinary mornings feel like battles fought in silence. "I understand," she said gently, sliding a napkin across the table. "Everyone needs a quiet moment." For a while, they sat in a companionable silence. Lisa noticed little things, the careful way he handled the cutlery, the slight furrow of his brow when he sipped the coffee, the way his hands rested lightly on the table as if he were guarding some fragile thought. Despite his refinement, there was humility in him that drew her in. Then, almost on impulse, she reached out. "I know yesterday I covered your meal, but if you ever need more than breakfast, even just a chat, you can always talk to me." She smiled, trying to sound casual, but her voice carried an earnestness she couldn't hide. His gaze softened. "That's very kind of you," he said. There was a pause, almost like he was weighing whether to let her in. "You know," he continued, "it's rare to meet someone who gives without expecting anything. Most people give with conditions, or with a hidden agenda. But you simply give." Lisa's chest tightened. It was the first time in years someone had recognized her quiet efforts, her unspoken generosity. "I don't give for recognition," she said softly. "I just believe everyone deserves a little kindness. That's all." For the first time, the man smiled genuinely. It was brief, but it lit his entire face with a warmth that contrasted sharply with his quiet, almost solemn exterior. "I see that," he said. "I see it clearly." Over the next few days, he became a regular. Lisa noticed subtle changes in him, how he lingered longer over his coffee, how he began greeting the other patrons with a soft nod, how he occasionally shared a small laugh with her when she told a story about her son. In return, she learned a little about him. His name was Charles, and though he carried himself like a man accustomed to influence and wealth, he never flaunted it. He spoke with humility, sometimes sharing fragments of his life that hinted at hardship, loss, and resilience that mirrored her own struggles. One morning, as Lisa refilled his cup, she noticed him carefully sketching something in a small notebook. Curious, she leaned a little closer. "That's beautiful. Do you draw often?" she asked. He looked up, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "I used to," he admitted. "It's been a while. Life gets in the way." Lisa smiled. Sometimes, life just needs a little reminder to slow down. Maybe this is that reminder for you. It was during moments like this that trust began to blossom. Charles started to share more than casual observations. He spoke of memories, dreams, and small regrets. Lisa listened without judgment, offering empathy that had long been absent from his carefully curated world. And in return, she felt something stir within herself, a sense that her efforts, her quiet acts of care, had meaning beyond what she had ever imagined. Then came the first act of kindness from Charles that caught her completely off guard. One rainy morning, as she handed him a coffee, he placed a few bills on the counter, more than enough to cover his breakfast. "For you," he said simply. "You deserve this, and more." Lisa froze, her hands trembling slightly. I can't accept this," she stammered. "Please," he insisted, a gentle firmness in his voice. "Consider it a thank you." You've given me more than a cup of coffee. You've reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten, humanity. Gratitude, kindness, connection. Her heart swelled. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel seen, not just for her hard work, but for the compassion that defined her. "Thank you," she whispered, a tear catching in her eye. They sat together in silence for a moment, listening to the rain tap against the windows. And in that quiet, ordinary diner, a bond had formed, delicate, fragile, yet profoundly human. Two people from very different worlds, drawn together by respect, empathy, and the simple truth that kindness can bridge even the widest gaps. Lisa began to notice subtle changes in herself. She moved with more confidence, her smile lingered a little longer for other patrons, and she found herself dreaming of possibilities beyond the confines of her small apartment. Charles, in turn, seemed lighter, freer, almost unburdened, by the connection they had built over shared moments and simple gestures. As she refilled his coffee one evening, she asked softly, "Do you ever wish life had been different? That things weren't so hard at times?" He looked thoughtful, then nodded. "Every day," he admitted. "But meeting someone like you, it makes me believe that even the hardest roads can lead to something good. Sometimes, it just takes a single act to remind us of that." Lisa smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "Then maybe we're both lucky," she said. And in that fleeting exchange, the foundation of a remarkable journey was laid, one that neither of them could yet imagine would change their lives forever. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet rhythm of the diner became the backdrop for an extraordinary bond. Lisa found herself looking forward to mornings more than she had in years. Charles had become more than just a regular customer, he was a reminder that kindness, once offered, could create ripples far beyond what anyone imagined. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. Charles shared fragments of a life filled with unexpected challenges, moments of doubt, and years spent trying to measure success by standards that never felt right. Lisa, in turn, shared stories of Ethan, of long nights spent worrying about bills, of dreams she kept tucked away for fear they might never come true. Each exchange built trust, bridging the gap between their vastly different worlds. One afternoon, Charles lingered after finishing his meal, watching Lisa clear tables with her usual efficiency. "You're remarkable," he said quietly. "Most people would be hardened by what you've gone through, but you carry so much light. It's rare." Lisa smiled, a little embarrassed. "I've had no choice but to keep going," she said. "Sometimes kindness is the only thing that keeps me afloat." Charles nodded, understanding more than words could convey. In that moment, the diner seemed to shrink around them, leaving only two people connected by honesty, empathy, and the quiet acknowledgement of life's unpredictability. But as their friendship deepened, obstacles began to surface. Lisa had started to imagine a life beyond mere survival, yet the constraints of her reality were relentless. Bills piled up, the diner's wages barely covered rent, and she feared any shift in her routine might endanger the fragile stability she had carved out for herself and Ethan. Charles, too, faced challenges. His position in the city, his social obligations, and the expectations tied to wealth and reputation made his connection to Lisa complicated. He wanted to help, to extend his support, but he feared how the world would perceive it. How could a man of means openly care for a waitress without raising questions, without creating gossip that might taint their relationship? One morning, a subtle tension filled the diner. Charles arrived as usual, but his posture was stiff, his eyes distant. Lisa noticed immediately. "Everything okay?" she asked softly, pouring his coffee. He hesitated. "I've been thinking," he admitted. "I want to help, but there are complications. Things I can't easily explain. Sometimes, it feels like the more I try to do good, the more obstacles appear." Lisa felt a pang of frustration mixed with empathy. She knew all too well how life tested those who dared to care. "You don't have to explain," she said gently. "All I know is, you've already made a difference by being here." Despite their growing bond, doubt crept into both of their hearts. Lisa wondered if her efforts could ever truly bridge the divide between their worlds. Charles worried that his attempts to help might fail or even backfire. Each small act of kindness was shadowed by the fear of misunderstanding or societal judgment. Yet, they kept returning to one another. Small gestures became lifelines, Charles bringing a fresh bouquet for the counter on a dreary morning, Lisa leaving a warm cup of cocoa for him when the rain poured outside. Each act reinforced the fragile trust they were building. It was in these moments, simple yet profound, that their connection deepened beyond convenience or circumstance. It became essential. Community whispers began to reach Lisa's ears. Some patrons admired the bond she shared with Charles, noticing the gentle light he seemed to bring into her world. Others were skeptical, suggesting that someone like him could never truly care about someone like her. Those whispers stung, but Lisa refused to let them shake her. She had lived too long relying on her own strength to allow the judgments of others to dictate her heart. Then came the major obstacle that threatened to unravel everything. One evening, as the diner closed and the city lights flickered on, Charles revealed a complication he could no longer keep hidden. He had been under investigation for a legal dispute stemming from his business. Nothing he had done was wrong, but the public scrutiny threatened to derail the quiet life he was beginning to build with her friendship. Lisa felt the familiar weight of worry press against her chest. She understood fear, financial instability, and uncertainty, but this was different. This was someone else's crisis, and it could affect them both. "What can I do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing," he admitted. "This is bigger than us. I can't control it, and I don't want it to drag you down." Lisa shook her head, frustration and determination mingling. "Then we face it together. Whatever comes, we face it. You've already done so much for me. I'm not going to walk away now." It was the first time Charles truly realized the depth of her courage. Here was someone who had every reason to protect herself, to retreat into survival mode, yet she was willing to stand by him, not out of obligation, but out of conviction. Over the following days, their bond strengthened further, tempered by trials. Lisa became a source of calm and reassurance in Charles's storm, offering perspective that no lawyer, assistant, or advisor could provide. And Charles, in turn, quietly supported her, offering assistance in ways that respected her dignity and pride. Yet tension persisted. Each phone call, each news headline about Charles's situation reminded them both that their connection was fragile. Small doubts, once easily brushed aside, now lingered in quiet corners of the diner. Lisa worried that her small world might be engulfed by the storm he faced. Charles feared that his past and present obligations could destroy the fragile trust they had built. And still, through it all, they persisted. Shared laughter over trivial matters, quiet confidences exchanged over steaming mugs of coffee, moments of vulnerability that revealed the humanity beneath wealth, poverty, and circumstance, they clung to these. Lisa began to notice subtle changes in herself. She stood taller, smiled more freely, and found herself daring to imagine possibilities beyond her modest life. Charles, too, seemed lighter, less burdened by the rigid expectations of his social world. Together, they navigated the storm, slowly realizing that obstacles could be overcome, not avoided, but faced with courage, empathy, and trust. The storm that had threatened to pull them apart slowly began to lift. Charles's legal complications were resolved, through a combination of persistence, careful guidance, and unexpected allies from his own network, but the experience had left its mark. Lisa had witnessed the stress and uncertainty etched across his face, the way he carried a burden he hadn't shared with anyone before. And yet, through it all, their bond had only strengthened. One crisp morning, Lisa arrived at the diner to find a small bouquet of wildflowers on her counter, tied with a simple ribbon. There was a note, "for all the kindness you've shown, and for teaching me what it truly means to give without expectation." She felt her eyes prick with tears. For the first time in years, someone recognized the heart she had carried quietly, steadfastly, through hardship and exhaustion. Charles arrived soon after, his usual calm demeanor touched with something softer, gratitude, relief, and an unmistakable warmth. "Good morning, Lisa," he said, his voice carrying the easy confidence of someone no longer weighed down by invisible chains. "Morning," she replied, her own smile tinged with a mixture of pride and disbelief. She had lived a life of small gestures, never imagining they could ripple outward and touch someone like him. And yet here he was, a man of wealth and influence, humbled by her quiet generosity, transformed by her empathy. Over the following weeks, their interactions evolved in ways that neither had anticipated. Charles began involving Lisa in small projects aimed at giving back to the community, programs for underprivileged children, donations to local shelters, initiatives for families struggling like hers. Every gesture was designed to empower, not to show off, and Lisa felt a thrill of possibility she hadn't known in years. Her apartment, once cramped and suffocating, slowly transformed. A small scholarship fund was established in her name, supporting single mothers and hardworking families. Lisa could now breathe easier, knowing that her efforts, once invisible and unnoticed, had become part of something much larger than herself. But the greatest transformation was personal. Ethan watched his mother grow into someone fearless, someone who no longer carried the weight of the world alone. He saw her laughing freely again, daring to dream, and believing that life could be more than survival. And Lisa, in turn, discovered that helping others didn't diminish her own struggles, it amplified her capacity to hope, to trust, and to love. One evening, Lisa turned on the television as she cleaned the kitchen. The local news channel was broadcasting a feature on Charles's recent philanthropy. Her eyes widened as she recognized his face and, suddenly, his name flashed across the screen in bold letters. Charles Whitman, business leader and community advocate, inspires through small acts of kindness. Her heart skipped a beat. She remembered the quiet man who had sat in her diner weeks ago, sipping coffee, hesitant to accept anything more than a simple meal. That same man now appeared on the news, not for his wealth, but for the way he had begun using it to uplift countless lives. And she realized, with a mixture of awe and humility, that her small act, paying for his breakfast, seeing him as a human being rather than a title, had sparked a ripple effect that changed more than one life. Charles arrived home that evening, carrying a small, carefully wrapped box. "For you," he said, placing it on the counter. "You didn't just help me, you reminded me of what's important. This is the least I can do to thank you." Inside was a letter, beautifully handwritten, detailing his journey, how her simple gesture of kindness had reminded him of the humanity he had nearly forgotten, how it inspired him to act, and how he wanted to ensure that she and Ethan would always have the support they needed. Along with the letter was a modest but meaningful contribution to a future she had once thought impossible, a down payment for a small house where she and Ethan could finally feel safe and secure. Lisa's hands shook as she read the letter, tears spilling freely. "I never imagined I could make such a difference," she whispered. Charles smiled, his eyes reflecting a mixture of humility and admiration. "You already did," he said. "You didn't just change me. You changed the world around you, even if you didn't realize it at the time." The following weeks were filled with quiet celebrations, not in extravagant parties or public displays, but in small, deeply meaningful moments. Ethan explored his new home, his laughter echoing through rooms that had once felt impossible. Lisa walked through the small garden outside, planting flowers and imagining a future filled with possibilities she had never dared to dream of. And yet, the story came full circle in a way that touched everyone involved. A few months later, Charles returned to the diner, not as a wealthy benefactor, but simply as a man who wanted to reconnect with the place where it all began. Lisa greeted him warmly, the two sharing a quiet smile that spoke volumes. He reached across the counter, offering a small envelope. Inside were tickets for a community event, an initiative that would allow local families to meet and support one another. "For you," he said. "You started this ripple. Now, we share it with everyone." Lisa felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The diner, once a place of survival and routine, had become a launching point for something extraordinary. The quiet man she had served, the man she had never expected to impact, had grown into someone who could help countless others. And in the process, she herself had transformed, from a weary waitress carrying burdens alone, into a woman whose kindness had created change far beyond herself. As the sun set, casting golden light across the diner's windows, Lisa realized the truth she had always believed but had never fully seen in action: one small act of kindness, offered without expectation, has the power to change lives, including your own. This story reminds us that ordinary people, acting with courage and compassion, can create extraordinary outcomes. From survival to trust, from hope to transformation, Lisa and Charles's journey shows that humanity's true power lies not in wealth or status, but in the simple act of seeing another person, recognizing their worth, and extending a hand when it is needed most. What's one way you could make a difference in someone's life today? Challenge yourself to perform a small act of kindness this week, and see how it ripples outward in ways you never imagined. Months had passed since the quiet man and the hard-working waitress first met. The diner, once a place of routine and struggle, now carried an air of hope. Lisa's life had changed in ways she had never dared imagine. Ethan ran freely in their new home, laughter spilling through the rooms, and Lisa no longer carried the constant, gnawing weight of survival alone. Charles continued to use his influence and resources to uplift the community, always quietly, always with humility. He became a mentor for local programs, helping families find education, shelter, and opportunity, always remembering the young waitress who saw him as a person before he was a headline. Their connection endured, a reminder that kindness, when genuine and unconditional, is never wasted. Lisa and Charles continued to meet at the diner, not for publicity, not for appearances, but because it was where their journey began, where empathy met understanding, and small gestures turned into life-changing moments. The ripple effect of their story extended far beyond them. The children and families they helped found hope in places they had long given up. The community, inspired by the transformation of two seemingly ordinary individuals, began to act with more compassion toward one another. And Lisa, who had once thought her life too small to make a difference, realized that one person's kindness can indeed ignite change in ways unimaginable. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. One small act, a smile, a helping hand, a meal shared, can set off a chain reaction that transforms lives. Every gesture matters, no matter how ordinary it seems. If this story touched your heart, please like this video. It helps more people discover these inspiring acts of humanity. Subscribe for more stories that restore faith in humanity and remind us of the power we each hold to change someone's world. Most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing. It could be as simple as a conversation, a meal, or a kind word. Ask yourself, what act of kindness will I perform this week? Share your commitment in the comments below.